On my wedding day, my husband's female bestie showed up holding a torn bridesmaid dress and accused me of assaulting her in front of all our guests. I had no way to defend myself, so I turned to my husband for help. Instead, he looked at me with fake disappointment and publicly labeled me a lesbian. Then, to get his hands on my family's assets, he had me committed to a psychiatric hospital, where I was tortured and humiliated. I barely managed to escape, only to die in a car accident they'd carefully planned. It wasn't until my final moments that I found out the truth. The torn bridesmaid dress wasn't evidence of my crime. It was proof of their affair in the stairwell moments before the ceremony. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my dressing room, minutes before the wedding. This time, I'm going to make sure those two pay for everything. Everything was playing out exactly as I remembered it, 10 minutes before the wedding ceremony. Liam Reynolds' female bestie, Chloe Brooks, stumbled out of the dressing room and threw herself into the arms of Liam, who was already dressed in his groom's tuxedo. Her once elegant bridesmaid dress had been violently torn, exposing large patches of pale skin and a clear dark hickey on her collarbone. Clutching her neckline, she pointed a trembling finger at me, standing not far away. "Emma, I always thought you were so nice to me because you saw me as your little sister. But why did you push me against the door in the second-floor lounge and rip my dress? I'm not a lesbian." Her words dropped like a stone into still water. The banquet hall, which had been buzzing with wedding cheer just moments before, fell into dead silence. Everyone stared at me with looks of shock and disgust. Lesbian? Sexual assault? Harassing a bridesmaid? Any one of those accusations would be enough to destroy a bride on her wedding day. I stood there coldly, watching Chloe's tear-streaked face. I said nothing. Liam quickly took off his suit jacket, wrapped it tightly around Chloe, and pulled her protectively into his arms. Then he looked up at me. His expression wasn't angry. Instead, it was full of pain tolerance and helplessness. "Emma," he said, "you've barely let me touch you during the 3 years we've been together. If you're confused about your sexuality or dealing with pre-wedding anxiety, you should have told me. I wouldn't blame you. We could have seen a therapist together. But Chloe is a very traditional girl. How could you force yourself on her like that? It scared her. So here's what you're going to do. Apologize to Chloe in front of everyone, and I'll pretend this never happened. The wedding will go on, okay?" Listen to him. So devoted. So forgiving. If I hadn't died once before, I might have applauded his noble restraint. But every word he spoke, disguised as peacemaking and protection, was a knife to my back. By mentioning that I wouldn't let him touch me, he practically confirmed the rumor that I wasn't straight. And by framing me as someone who loses control and uses force, he painted me as a dangerous lunatic. Last time, in this very same hall, faced with this sudden slanderous accusation, I lost my mind. I sobbed and swore I loved men. I hysterically insisted I'd never touched Chloe. But the more frantic I became, the more Liam looked at me like I belonged in a mental institution. In the end, he declared me mentally unstable, forcibly called off the wedding, and had me committed to a psychiatric hospital. All so he could take over the inheritance my grandfather had left me. He didn't even have to fight for it. I spent 3 full years being tortured inside that place. When I finally managed to escape, I died in a car accident they had meticulously planned. It wasn't until my last breath, watching the two of them embrace outside the wreckage, that I finally understood. The mark on Chloe's neck wasn't from me. It was a hickey Liam had left on her in the stairwell right before the ceremony, while they were sneaking around together. I pulled myself back to the present. I stood perfectly still, my gaze drifting past Chloe's trembling shoulders and landing on Liam's collar. On the inside of Liam's white shirt collar, there was a faint smudge of Chloe's lipstick. "Emma, what are you waiting for? Just apologize. Everyone's watching." Liam frowned when I didn't respond, his voice laced with urgency and pressure. A few of the bridesmaids who were close to Chloe saw that I showed no remorse and immediately jumped in to pile on. "Emma, what is wrong with you? You do something awful, and you're still acting so entitled." "Exactly. I knew something was up this morning when you refused to have a male makeup artist and insisted on swapping the whole team for women. Turns out you had an agenda. You just can't stand having men around." Another bridesmaid raised her voice with absolute certainty. "I saw it with my own eyes 10 minutes ago." Emma hiked up her dress and headed to the VIP room at the end of the second floor. I wondered what she was doing there. Now I know exactly what kind of disgusting business she was up to. The rumor had just formed a perfect airtight loop. Before I could even open my mouth to defend myself, Chloe pulled out her phone with a trembling hand and shoved the screen in everyone's face. "Emma, if you really didn't mean to do anything wrong, then why did you send me this text?" On the screen, clearly showing my profile picture and name, was a message sent 15 minutes ago. "Chloe, come to the VIP lounge at the end of the second floor. I have a surprise for you." But even more damning, there was a string of explicit photos above it, mirror selfies of me in nothing but lace lingerie. For the last 2 weeks, Emma has been sending me these photos late at night. Chloe was shaking so hard she could barely stand, her face a mask of humiliation and terror. I didn't think anything of it at first. I thought she just liked dressing up and saw me as her closest friend, the kind you share girl talk with. Every time, I stupidly complimented her on her body and her clothes. She suddenly lifted her head, pointed at me, and burst into tears. Until today. Until just now, when she trapped me in that lounge, ripped my dress, and forced herself on me. That's when I finally understood exactly what kind of sick game she was playing. I treated you like a real sister, and you used that to manipulate and violate me. The room completely erupted. If everyone had just been suspicious before, now they were convinced. The looks in the guests' eyes shifted into something much darker. Whispers and pointed fingers washed over me like a wave. "Oh my God, she even sent those kinds of photos? Liam must be cursed. He's marrying a woman who not only likes women but sexually assaults her bridesmaid? Someone call the police. She needs to be locked up." I lowered my gaze. Earlier that morning, Liam had taken my phone, claiming he needed to double-check the final guest list. "Enough!" A voice cut through the chaos, authoritative, dripping with disapproval. Liam's mother, Evelyn Reynolds, emerged from the crowd with her relatives in tow. She didn't scream like some trashy woman off the street. Instead, she looked down at me as if she were doing me the greatest possible favor simply by acknowledging my existence. "Emma, the Reynolds family may not be old money, but we have standards. There is no room for this kind of perverted, shameful behavior." She sighed heavily and took Liam's hand. "My poor, foolish son, still blindly in love with you. Even after all this, he's willing to look past your disgusting little fetish. Evelyn turned her head and fixed me with a sharp stare. Look, since Liam is willing to be generous and forgive you, I'll treat this as a misunderstanding. But Chloe is an innocent young woman. She can't just suffer this kind of humiliation for nothing. Emma, right here in front of all the guests, get on your knees and beg Chloe for her forgiveness. Also, transfer the vacant villa you own in the south part of town to her. Then this matter is settled. Evelyn lifted her chin, her tone leaving no room for argument. And don't even think about setting foot inside the Reynolds family's estate for the rest of your life. What a noble, righteous mother-in-law. What a self-sacrificing Reynolds family. I looked at the people in front of me. Liam, with his fake expression of, I'm doing this for your own good. Chloe with her coy, fragile act, and my future mother-in-law's shameless greed, using morality as a cover to rob me of a house. In my past life, this suffocating combination of moral blackmail and phony forgiveness had driven me to the brink of collapse. In the end, unable to defend myself, I was labeled a crazy woman. But in this life, I only felt disgust. And also, absurdly, laughter. You want my villa? You want to trample over my flesh and blood to build your own adulterous little fairy tale? I slowly wiped the cold smile off my face and under a sea of contemptuous stares, took one step forward. You want me to kneel and beg for her forgiveness? And throw in a villa? I scanned the entire room, finally letting my gaze land on Liam's face, which was struggling to stay composed. My voice turned ice cold. Liam, do you really think this little act of righteous sacrifice you're putting on is touching? You want me to confess? I locked eyes with him and spoke each word deliberately. Who do you think you are? The moment I said that, Liam's face froze. His mask of devotion and magnanimity nearly cracked, but he recovered quickly, immediately putting on an expression of agonized heartbreak mixed with pity. He strode toward me and reached out to forcibly grab my shoulder. Emma, are you having another paranoid episode? What are you talking about? With the tone of someone soothing a mental patient, he sighed helplessly for everyone to hear. Please forgive her. Her condition is getting worse. She can't tell reality from fantasy anymore. As he spoke, he tightened his grip, trying to force my head down into a bow toward Chloe. Be good. Stop making a scene. Just lower your head and apologize to Chloe, and this whole thing will be over. I sidestepped his dirty hand, grabbed a wine glass from the nearby table, and smashed it at his feet. The room went dead silent again. I stood there in the shattered glass, staring coldly at him. Keep your filthy hands, the ones that have touched other women, off me. Liam was stunned by my sudden outburst. He probably never expected that I, who had always swallowed my pride for the sake of keeping the peace, would completely flip the table today. Evelyn immediately started shrieking. Crazy! Emma has absolutely lost her mind. Liam, call security. Get her out of here. Don't let her make a mockery of us any longer. The groomsmen and hotel security moved in, trying to grab me. Liam's face turned ashen. He dropped all pretense of patience. Emma, that's enough. If you keep acting like this, I'm going to have to call a psychiatrist. The same old trick again. Paint me as crazy, try to strip me of my right to speak as a normal person in front of everyone. I watched his furious, flustered face and spoke slowly. Don't bother calling a doctor. I met their uneasy, suspicious stares and let out a cold laugh. I've already called the police. As soon as I said that, the color drained completely from Liam and Chloe's faces. What are you talking about? Liam hissed, veins bulging in his forehead. Sexual harassment and forcible groping are actual criminal charges. Since you're both so certain that I tore her dress and assaulted her, such serious accusations, then of course we should let the police decide what really happened. I looked at Chloe and deliberately emphasized each word. Once the police get here, they can take that torn bridesmaid dress back for a full fingerprint and DNA analysis. I'm very curious to find out whether the skin cells and saliva they find on it belong to me or to someone else. The moment she heard the words DNA analysis, Chloe's legs gave out and she nearly collapsed onto the floor. Liam was also drenched in cold sweat. He clearly hadn't expected that I would refuse to play by his rules, that I would rather turn my own wedding into a criminal case than swallow this humiliation. Just as his brain was racing to come up with another lie to force the situation back under control, a sharp, unmistakable wail of police sirens came from outside the banquet hall. Two uniformed police officers strode through the doors. The guests, who had been whispering among themselves, fell instantly silent. No one had expected that this marriage between two wealthy families would actually end up with the police getting involved. Liam's face shifted when he saw them.
Liam's expression flickered the moment the officers stepped in, too fast to be confidence, too slow to be innocence. Officer, he said immediately, voice shifting into something carefully controlled, almost relieved. This is a misunderstanding. My fiancée is unwell. She's been making false accusations all evening. Chloe, still half collapsed against Evelyn's grip, seized the moment like a lifeline. Yes, she assaulted me, she cried, pointing at Emma with shaking fingers. She even admitted it earlier in private messages. I can show you. One of the officers held up a hand. Everyone involved is going to give a statement. One at a time. That single sentence cracked the room open. The wedding guests who had been whispering now looked genuinely unsettled. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was paperwork, evidence, consequences. Emma didn't move. She simply looked at Liam. The officer reached forward, gently but firmly, and adjusted the inside of Liam's color. A faint smear of pink stood out against the white fabric. Not visible from a distance. Not accidental. Close contact stain. The kind you only get when you're standing too close to someone who shouldn't be there. A murmur spread through the guests. Emma watched it land. She didn't smile. Not yet. Chloe went rigid. Evelyn's grip loosened without her noticing. One of the bridesmaids whispered, that's not. Liam snapped, it's nothing. It's from earlier, someone hugged me. Sir, the officer interrupted, now fully focused. We're going to need both of you to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of assault and falsification of evidence. That word, falsification, hit harder than anything else. Chloe's breathing turned uneven. Emma finally shifted her gaze, just slightly, toward her. You said I sent you messages, Emma said softly. You'll be asked to provide the original device. Not screenshots. The phone. Chloe froze. Because somewhere in that silence, everyone understood the problem. Screenshots could be arranged. Phones told the truth. And Liam, just for a moment, just a fraction of a second, looked at Chloe instead of Emma. Not protectively. Not lovingly. Calculating. That tiny expression was enough. The officer noticed too. Both of you, he said again, more firm now. Step aside. Now. Security moved instinctively to block exits, but the energy of the room had changed completely. The guests weren't watching a scandal anymore. They were watching a collapse. As Liam was guided forward, he finally turned his head toward Emma, voice low, strained. You're really going to destroy everything over this? Emma met his eyes. For the first time all day, her voice carried something like certainty. No, she said. You already did that. I'm just making sure it stays visible. And as the police escorted them away through a room full of frozen guests, the wedding, perfectly arranged, perfectly staged, stopped was their tune. Emma didn't watch them leave like a victim. She was watching her prey fall into their own trap. And then she smiled. Not a thin, tragic smile. A real one filled with vigor, sharp and fully amused. Because the thing everyone in that room had misunderstood was simple. She was waiting for this. By the time the police cars pulled away from the venue, the wedding hall was still full, guests frozen in place, phones half lowered, whispers trying and failing to become coherent sentences. Emma stepped out onto the marble steps in her wedding dress. The wind caught the hem. Cameras flashed automatically now, not for celebration, but for aftermath. She didn't flinch. A black car was already waiting at the curb. Her beautiful Mercedes Maybach. The driver opened the door like he had been expecting her the entire time. Miss Reynolds, he said respectfully. A few guests turned at that name. Reynolds. As in that Reynolds family. As in the inheritance Liam had been so eager to position himself near. Emma paused just long enough to glance back at the entrance. Inside, chaos. Security. Chloe being questioned. Liam arguing with officers, his voice rising in panic as his plan slipped further away with every second. Emma stepped into the car. The doors closed. Silence swallowed the outside world. Only then did she lean back, slowly removing the veil from her hair like it was something ornamental rather than meaningful. Her phone buzzed. A message. Law office. Assets successfully secured under emergency fraud protection clause. Frozen pending investigation. Another buzz. Private investigator. Original device obtained. Deleted messages recovered. Timeline reconstructed. Solid. Another. Board representative. Awaiting your instruction. Emma tilted her head slightly, reading each one with calm satisfaction. Then she typed. Don't settle it quickly. Then another message. I want them to understand what losing control feels like. She hit send. And finally, she looked out the tinted window as the wedding venue disappeared behind her. The next morning, Liam woke up in a holding room, hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, the scent of panic clinging to him. He wasn't alone. Emma's lawyer sat across from him. Chloe was in another room down the hall crying, insisting, rewinding her story over and over while being asked the same calm, dismantling questions. And outside both of them, a machine already turning. Bank accounts reviewed. Messages restored. Witnesses re-interviewed. Hotel staff statements cross-checked. Security footage pulled frame by frame. Everything they thought was messy was actually organized. And Emma? Emma was sitting in her penthouse apartment, barefoot, hair down, sipping something expensive and sweet like she had all the time in the world. Her assistant stood nearby. They're requesting a settlement meeting. Emma swirled the drink lightly. Requesting? A small smile returned. No, she said softly. They're not in a position to request anything. She set the glass down. Tell them I'll consider listening, if they beg properly. Her assistant hesitated. And if they refuse? Emma's eyes flicked toward the city skyline. Then she smiled a little wider. Then I'll just keep taking pieces until they learn manners. By noon, Liam's carefully built image was already cracking in public. By afternoon, Chloe's contradictions were trending online. By evening, Evelyn Reynolds was on the phone with 3 different lawyers who all gave the same answer. This wasn't salvageable. It was containment. And Emma? She didn't rage. She didn't spiral. She didn't become cold. She simply started playing. Because for the first time, the people who tried to script her downfall were finally inside a story she controlled. And she intended to enjoy every single scene. Emma didn't discover power. She played with it. That was the difference. By the time Liam's lawyer finished the second sentence in their emergency hearing call, Emma was already laughing softly into her drink, like the entire situation had turned into private entertainment. Genuinely amused. Oh, she said, tilting her head as she listened through speakerphone. So he's claiming emotional distress? She covered her mouth for a second, like she was trying not to interrupt. Then she failed. A bright, delighted laugh slipped out anyway. I'm sorry, please continue. This is getting good. Across town, Liam sat stiff in a chair, hearing Emma's voice echo through the line. It didn't sound like the woman he thought he buried. It sounded like someone watching a pet knock over furniture on purpose, just to see what happens next. Emma tapped her finger lightly against the arm of her chair. Let me summarize, she said cheerfully. You used my phone. You fabricated evidence. You attempted to medically and socially discredit me in front of 200 witnesses. You tried to route my assets into your control. And now you're upset because consequences? A pause. Then another laugh, so light it almost sounded affectionate. Liam, you're adorable. That word hit the room like a slap. He stiffened. Stop talking like this. You're acting insane. Oh no, Emma cut in, sounding almost thrilled. That was your specialty, wasn't it? She leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, absolutely comfortable. You don't get it yet, she continued brightly. You're not in a situation where you argue anymore. You're in a situation where you explain yourself. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone trying not to drop something fragile. Her smile widened. And unfortunately for you, I'm not fragile. On the other side of the city, Chloe was mid-statement when her phone was placed in front of her again. Open the gallery, the investigator said calmly. Her breathing stuttered. Emma, sitting comfortably in her penthouse, watched the recovered data stream in through her private feed like she was watching a movie she had already paid extra for. She even leaned forward slightly when Chloe's face shifted. Oh, Emma murmured, delighted. There it is. A pause. That's the moment she realizes. She looked genuinely entertained. Like a child watching a domino line finally hit its best part. By evening, Liam's carefully curated narrative had stopped working entirely. Not because people believed Emma. Because Emma had stopped playing defense. She was now actively rearranging reality in real time. A statement released under Reynolds' legal counsel didn't ask for apologies. It listed receipts, financial interference, forgery, coercion attempts, and at the bottom, a simple line. Further actions will be pursued at the discretion of Ms. Reynolds. Emma read it once and kicked her feet slightly on the couch, like she was pleased with a dessert. This is fun, she said out loud, to no one in particular. Her assistant, standing nearby, blinked. Fun. Emma looked up, eyes bright. They thought they were writing my ending, she said, smiling wider. But they gave me a sandbox instead. She tapped her phone screen. A new message draft appeared. Don't settle anything yet. She paused, then added. I'm not done enjoying them. Send. Later that night, Liam finally demanded to speak to her directly. The call connected. Silence for 2 seconds. Then Emma answered, voice warm like she was greeting an old acquaintance at a party. Hi. Liam exhaled sharply. What do you want? There it was. Finally. The question. Emma's smile deepened. Oh, she said lightly. That's the wrong framing. A pause, just long enough for him to feel it. Then she added, almost playfully. I don't want things from you. I already have everything I need. A soft laugh again, easy, entertained, completely unbothered. I just decide what happens to you next. And before he could respond, she ended the call. Emma set the phone down beside her drink and leaned back into the couch, absolutely satisfied. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, she smiled like the entire world had finally become something interesting enough to keep. Emma didn't slow the ruin down. She sped it up on purpose. By morning, she wasn't waiting for calls anymore. She was issuing instructions like she was conducting an orchestra that had finally learned to obey her tempo. Liam's first hearing didn't even feel like a defense anymore. It felt like exposure. Because every strong claim his legal team tried to push forward got met with something worse already waiting. A time-stamped file. A restored chat log. A hotel security angle they hadn't noticed was still recording audio in the VIP hallway. And Emma? Emma didn't sit in the courtroom. She watched it remotely, feet up on her desk, laughing every time Liam's lawyer paused mid-sentence because another piece of evidence dropped into their shared system folder. Oh no, she said out loud at one point, delighted. That one's my favorite. Her assistant glanced over. Which one? The one where he panics, Emma replied, grinning. By noon, Chloe tried to pivot. She changed her story. Then changed it again. Then started crying mid-statement when the investigator calmly placed her own phone on the table and said. Then explain this version of events recorded at 11:42 p.m. Unedited. Emma watched that part live. She actually leaned forward in interest. Oh, she said, pleased. She's collapsing faster than I expected. A pause. That's my fault. I underestimated how fragile she was. She sounded almost proud of the improvement opportunity. By afternoon, Liam tried a different angle. Control the narrative outside the system. He released a statement. It didn't trend the way he expected. Because within 20 minutes, Emma's team released a counter package. It didn't argue with him. It simply made him irrelevant. Emma read the public reaction scrolling across her tablet and laughed again, louder this time. They're turning on him already? She asked, amused. That was faster than I thought. She tapped her screen twice. Push the second archive. Her assistant hesitated. Second archive? Emma smiled sweetly. The one he forgot we had. By evening, Liam's circle started breaking. First came silence from his allies. Then polite distance. Then outright denials of involvement. And then, a leaked message thread. Not from Emma's side. From Chloe's. Where she admitted something she thought was private. That she needed Emma out of the picture. Emma saw it and actually laughed out loud. Like she was watching a comedy scene land perfectly. Oh my god, she said, covering her mouth. She did help. That night, Liam finally tried to call her again. Emma answered immediately. Too quickly. Like she'd been waiting. Hi, she said brightly. His voice was wrecked. Stop. Just stop whatever you're doing. Emma tilted her head. Why? A beat. Then she smiled wider. I'm not even halfway done. Silence. On his end, breathing. Tight. Controlled. Losing control anyway. Emma leaned back in her chair, eyes bright with enjoyment. This is the part one like, she said casually. When people realize they don't get to negotiate anymore. Another small laugh. You should see yourself, Liam. You're finally interesting. That did it. A crack in his voice. You're enjoying this. Emma didn't deny it. She looked genuinely entertained. I love it. Then she paused, almost thoughtfully. I used to think revenge was about pain. A soft hum of amusement. But this, she gestured vaguely at the chaos unfolding through every screen she owned. This is just management. She tapped her phone once. And I'm very good at managing things that misbehave. By midnight, Liam wasn't fighting a story anymore. He was trying to survive the version of reality Emma had already finalized. And Emma? Emma closed her laptop, stretched slightly, and smiled to herself like she'd just finished a very satisfying game level. Tomorrow, she said softly, we upgrade. By the next morning, Emma didn't build the case anymore. She detonated it. The full evidence package went live at 8 a.m. sharp. A full, undeniable sequence. Asterisk phone forensics showing Liam's access to Emma's device. Asterisk the fabricated message origin traced back to Chloe's own phone. Asterisk hotel security footage with timestamps that destroyed the assault claim. Asterisk financial records proving Liam's attempt to redirect Emma's inheritance assets. Asterisk witness statements that contradicted each other under simple cross-checking. There was no narrative left to argue with. Only facts. Within 3 hours, the wedding scandal wasn't a rumor anymore, it was a national headline. Within 5, Liam's company board froze him out entirely. Within 6, his lawyer publicly withdrew representation. On record, Chloe tried to disappear from the story. She didn't get the chance. Her phone data was already in the public forensic bundle. Every contradiction. Every staged message. Every edit. By midday, she wasn't the victim anymore. She was the origin point of a fraud allegation. By afternoon, police didn't hunt Liam. They simply executed a warrant that had already been prepared once the forensic report landed. 2 officers at his residence. A list of charges read calmly. Handcuffs applied. Done. The shift in public opinion was immediate and brutal. The same guests who had condemned Emma were now deleting posts. The same media outlets that called her unstable were running corrections. And the same family that tried to erase her name was now trying to distance themselves from Liam's. Emma watched it all from her penthouse, not pacing, not spiraling, not even particularly tense. Just entertained. She scrolled through the headlines, then laughed under her breath. So fast, she said, amused. They really turned on him overnight. Her assistant asked carefully, do you want any further action taken? Emma thought for a second. Then smiled. No, she said. Let it finish itself. A pause. Then lighter. I like watching what people do when they realize they picked the wrong person. By the time Liam was formally processed, the story was already over. No public sympathy left. No allies. No narrative defense that survived contact with evidence. Just consequences moving through the system at full speed. And Emma? She enjoyed the ruin. She simply let it complete its course while she enjoyed the view calm, amused, fully in control of the aftermath she had already finished writing.